So perfect. So I have Riley with me. He's the senior director of marketing. That's right, Riley. So he's the director of marketing at Cashflow,
Yep.
and we've been working together for SEO. And when we discussed initially that, hey, what does, where are you getting your pipeline from? Because the product is very new.
Yes.
It's a new take on things, and I'm scared of, like every marketer should be. Every marketer should be scared of like launching, creating a new category, and that's not something that you would normally recommend to people, right?
Right.
Now, but you were doing it, and you were getting phenomenal results on LinkedIn. So we had to do this. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So perfect. Yeah, so like, why don't you, like, maybe if you want to add anything to your introduction, because I haven't done any, but yeah, like,
Yeah,
please,
definitely.
please.
Oh yeah. So quickly, I'm Riley Timmons. Run marketing at Cashflow. We're early stage, sort of seed to Series A startup, and
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, we created a bit of a new category. Not that I would admit, we're going all in on category creation, but definitely a differentiation from some of the traditional categories like CPQ and
Yep.
subscription management. We kind of merged the two together for the SaaS workflow. Basically, we realized a lot of those tools, they weren't exactly designed for selling software and
Yep.
subscriptions. And it, kind of all flows better when it's connected to one platform. And, especially avoiding sort of the notorious implementation times and maintenance and upkeep that's
Yep.
involved with some of those systems. So yeah, that's sort of the space we're in. And, like you said, or alluded to, we didn't really have any options of demand capture. So
Mhm.
we kind of had to go LinkedIn ads naturally just to, get in front of our ICP and audience. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean, LinkedIn was the obvious spot for, selling to other early stage SaaS companies.
Mhm.
We kind of had a hunch it would work, but yeah, throughout all the companies I've been at, it's typically one channel that drives like 60-70% of the results. But it's
Yep.
been different every time. So, it's been Facebook ads in the past, LinkedIn ads in the past, and even SEO before that. So
Mhm.
always trying to build, additional channels around your sort of golden channel. But yeah,
Mhm.
for the time being, it's LinkedIn, and happy to dive in and share some tips that have worked for us.
Well, I remember we had a similar challenge that we had to overcome. So one of our clients also was in a new category. They had a couple of competitors, direct competitors as well, but then the entire category was so new that we were able to run ads like Google ads, but then that was like two calls a month, and that wasn't nearly enough for that company. And then we tried, or an agency before us, they had another agency before us, they tried G2 and Capterra ads, and then the intent was not right. There was mixed because they were very close to other categories, so that didn't work. So then we had to try out a different thing, and then we moved to LinkedIn, and then we tried ABM, and then it did work,
Yep.
but it took us 4 months to really make it work. And that's how we got into the entire demand gen. Like, did you, like, how did your paid ads journey start, right? Because what was the first thing you tried? Did you just land on LinkedIn and just start working, or was there something before this?
Yeah. So, in terms of cash flow, like you mentioned, pretty new company. I've
Yeah.
actually only been around for just under a year now. So
Mhm.
the company is about 2 years old, but we really started, taking it to market just about a year ago.
Yeah.
So in terms of, benchmark data, there not been much done. I think there was, maybe a couple thousand that were spent on LinkedIn ads, maybe a little bit of Google ads testing. But it was pretty much, a blank slate. So, I've definitely come into companies in the past where, things are actually working pretty good and you just choose like which ones to kind of optimize. So this one, yeah, it was, much more of a big bet. And like I mentioned, like I've definitely run LinkedIn ads in the past, but I've never had them as my sort of primary channel. And they definitely, it's not quite like the magic bullet that like Facebook ads used to be back in the day, where you kind of just, throw up some okay creative and it does all the algorithm targeting for you. It's a lot more hands-on, right? It's amazing because there's tons of engagement on there. You actually get really big ad real estate compared to other channels, and the targeting is great. But I mean, everyone knows like the cost per clicks are really high. So you either have to make it, work earlier, and at, sort of like a higher success rate, or have just such a big like ACV product where you maybe only need like one deal a month coming through it. For us, that's not the case, right? We're more sort of in like the 10 to 20 range. And when we got started, even a little bit lower than that. So, I mean, yeah, it's not like, we were, ROAS profitable the whole time or anything. It was definitely sort of an iterative process, but yeah, we've got it to the point now where it's pretty consistent, as our main channel, and we're able to reach majority of our ICP there, and so now it's kind of just a game of keeping up with new and engaging creatives, and additionally finding some new audiences to branch off into. But yeah, that's kind of how it's gone the last 11, 12 months or so.
So let's dig deeper into that, right? So I'm really curious about what didn't work and then going into what worked, right? So for example, there was this, I look at it as primarily messaging and targeting.
Yeah.
Those are the two major ones. And then now with all of intent and all that, you can maybe also get the timing right. And then there's your projections and attribution around it, right? So those are the 5 aspects broadly of ads. Amongst the 3, what did you have to change the most or work on the most? Which one was the toughest to crack? Messaging, targeting, timing.
Yeah, I would say messaging number 1 and targeting number 2.
Okay.
But it wasn't like, let's figure out messaging that works on LinkedIn ads. It was more like, let's figure out messaging that works for our business, right? So, I mean, yeah, even though the product had been built for about a year, like I said, like there's very little sort of a go to market for more than a couple months. So in terms of like, messages that resonated with people, it was kind of up to us to figure it out. And that's the tough part, right? When you don't have your messaging or targeting nailed down, or your landing pages, like you don't really know which of the 3 is the issue. And then if it starts working, you don't always really know which one is the reason for the success. So it always really helps when you at least have 1 or 2 of those nailed down. So that's, quick tip number 1 that I always do. If I'm launching a new campaign, like a new audience, I'll typically always use ads that, we know have performed in the past. So kind of have something to benchmark off of. But yeah, I would say messaging, for sure, number 1. And then the thing with targeting on number 2 is, I mean, even within LinkedIn job title targeting, right? Like it's, even if you choose one title, like director of marketing, it's actually such a big bundle of titles that go into that. And so one option is, just extreme manual analysis of exporting all of the job titles. And even then they don't give you everything. So yeah, we actually started using a couple like third-party tools. And, also did
any shout outs?
Yeah. Metadata.io. Great tool, especially for LinkedIn. You can send tools, or you can send audiences directly there. Yeah, they've been great. Like very rarely have I ever bought a tool where it's just like instantly better, but that's one of them, probably the only one.
Perfect. So we've discussed targeting, and I know you have a lot. You actually have a lot of good examples for messaging. So let's just get into it, right? So how do you, and maybe just describe the thought processes before you get into the example. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So the way you kind of think about messaging, especially if you're a new company that doesn't, really have awareness, or people don't really know what you do, you kind of have to think of the funnel. And the way I think about the funnel, especially for B2B SaaS, you can't really control where people enter or exit, right? If you're selling like maybe a e-commerce product, you can have kind of more control of the funnel, but that's because they can find out about the product and purchase in the same session, right? But we've had deals close in 2 days because we come in at the end of an evaluation cycle and, they like us better. And then we've had deals close in 6 months because we're the very first, stop of where they thought about doing things differently. And both are good and both can work. But I think the main thing is, trying not to, force people down a certain path. It's kind of just having all of the options available. Whether, they're at their sort of just realizing they have a problem stage, or they're evaluating 4 to 5 vendors and they want to know specifically why you, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it broadly.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also very passionate about this.
Yeah.
Don't try to push people down a funnel, because even if you, and this is one of the first things I did when I started my marketing career. I created this very elaborate and impressive looking retargeting structure. When if people saw this content, I mapped the entire website. It was a 1,000+ page website.
Yeah.
Into this is your middle of the funnel content, this is bottom of the funnel, this is top of the funnel, and our normal ads outperformed that by a lot. I
Yeah.
spent, I think, a couple of weeks working on that, and it just didn't work.
Oh yeah, I've had the
Yeah.
same thing, right? Like you get so micro targeted, and then you realize there's this thing called like a minimum audience count, and all this time you've spent building your several layers of retargeting, you can't actually run them, right? So yeah. I've felt that too.
Perfect. But why don't we get into let's look at some examples of the ads that you've seen work.
Yeah, definitely. Here, I'll share my screen. All right. Can you see it okay? Awesome. Cool. So like I mentioned, we kind of start at problem aware ads. And the main thing here, right, is sort of making people realize that there's a current that the current way is a problem. So for us, examples would be, like traditional CPQs were built 20 years ago to sell machine parts, not software. A lot of people don't even realize that, right? So when we're talking about selling a $10,000 software product versus a $500,000 machine part, it's easy to tell why that sort of tool might not work best. And then there's also process things, right? So these are two examples. Like time, revisions, friction can really blow deals. So a lot of times people don't even realize all the back and forth of updating quotes and sending those, and redlining and requesting pay. It kind of, it's not very buyer centric, right? So that was an example. And then another one, the same thing, was like prospects don't want to wait. B2C style checkout for B2B deals. The other thing too you'll see is like I try to do a mix of big text ads and then product sort of feature ads. But this is definitely one where messaging and text works a little better. Cool. So now we got to go on to categories. So right. So essentially, in like the user's perspective, they know there's a problem, but they don't really know, even how to solve that, or like what types of tools would solve. So essentially here, the goal is, making people realize that companies exist to solve the problem. So it's not focusing on your product so much. I mean, you can obviously use your company name. You don't want to like call out and give other people free ads, but it's just focusing on the category a bit more. And again, messaging, not so much features. So this one on the right over here, this is actually like probably one of our top 3 or 4 performing all time, but it's kind of just showing people like where we fit in the process, right? And I actually took this from one of our sales PowerPoint decks, but I realized like, oh, this is actually like a great visual because people can kind of instantly get it. And then it actually turned into like a main, messaging point for how we talk about cash flow. So, just like, we sit in between your CRM and ERP, and we kind of do everything, in between. So like your CRM is your sales source of truth, your ERP is your accounting and finance source of truth. And we make sure everything in between, stays accurate, but also, can get done fast without, friction. And then this other one here, this is another really good ad for us, but essentially just, calling out like what used to take hours and CPQ tool takes our reps minutes and cash flow. So kind of starting to like differentiate a little bit. The scratch out is great for catching attention. That's another, more broad tip, is always do something to catch attention first. And then kind of use that attention to allow yourself to go into more detail, whether it's in the copy or the image.
I have one question here, right? So when you mention category aware ads,
Yeah.
when there isn't really a category that you fall into. Like, there isn't an existing product or category that you fell into. What do you mean by that there?
Yeah. So, it's not like, we fit into this G2 category. It's kind of just helping people realize that, there's like an ecosystem of tools, which now that I say, sounds a lot like what a category is, but it's like even for us, right? Like we're not a traditional CPQ, but we're a bit more of like a deal closing platform, quoting and billing and subscription management. But even still, we're not the only company that does that, right? There's still a few other ones. So it's kind of showing people like, hey, there's actually like a new way to do things. Like you don't have to necessarily, buy multiple solutions to get this done. Even, like in this this image on the right, like quoting and e-sign and payments and like those are typically all their own individual categories. So yeah, just trying to show people like, hey, there's like a new way you can kind of do things.
And just another question, right? So, how do you, for targeting, did you use the same targeting in the ads that you showed earlier, and these just because you're not sure where in the stage you would catch people in?
Yeah, that's right. I typically run almost all of my ads to all the audiences. The exception would be like for finance is one of our main personas. It's different enough where they kind of care way more about payment things, but the other personas for us is like sales and rev ops and leadership. There's enough overlap there where we kind of run um the same ads, and then sure, like certain ads will work better for certain audiences. But I think another kind of cool theme is, like find your winner ads. Like we have one, and I've had it at other companies where there's one ad that, is one of the top two ads for like forever. And for us, even I'll show it in the next slide here. It was one of the first ads we made, but it still performs the best, or at least like top three best. So,
Mhm.
you never have to feel like there's definitely ad fatigue, which is a real thing. But if you find your winner ad, you can kind of just run it forever. Like it's not like that's the only ad you're going to run. But it's definitely something I've come across nice, and it's really nice. Like once you find it, and you can kind of keep getting dividends from it.
Perfect. So, you've shown us two ads earlier, two more ads in the category where category. What's the next type of ads that you have?
Yeah. So the next one would be company aware ads. So now we have the user aware of the problem. We have them aware of the category. Now we can kind of get into our own company and product a bit more. So this is where I would actually start to focus on features a little bit more, and kind of like clearly outline why your company's the best option for what the product does. So yeah, like this one on the left here. This was probably the first or second ad that we ever made, and we still have it on now, and it's super basic, right? Like it's super simple. It's not very like high quality production, but it works great for us. And this is a format that I'll definitely recommend, sort of old versus new way. And then this one on the right, this is actually a bit of a newer one, but same thing. Like it's quite feature heavy. And these types of ads, when you get into company aware, you definitely need to lean on the copy to kind of help inform some of what's going on. I mean, this left ad, it's all pretty clear. This right ad, it's a lot, but that's something that's worked pretty good for us, right? Is actually doing pretty contextual, detailed ads, because it's not like we're optimizing for the click. We're optimizing for the right click for the people that are maybe already a little bit interested or already problem aware and category aware. So if they've made it through those two stages, now you kind of you have bought more of their attention, more of their like patience, and you can actually get a bit more detailed. And I'm sure you've heard this before, right? But it's kind of like optimizing for the feed instead of the click.
Yeah.
These are ads where it's great to do that, right? Because you can give them so much information where you don't even need the click to get value from it. And I mean, we've backed that up, right? Where we've heard lots of times like, hey, my CEO saw your ad and they asked me to get some more information, or my CFO emailed me a screenshot of this. So it's yeah, that's kind of how I think about company-aware ads.
Interesting. Yeah. And what's the next one?
Yeah. So this would sort of be like the bottom of the funnel, so to speak, even though I've got a couple other ones, but social proof. So this one's pretty straightforward, right? So if someone's, aware of the pain, aware of the space, aware of the company, they just need like a little sort of like nudge over the hump to book the demo, right? And so this is mostly for retargeting. This is definitely the one subset of ads that I tend to keep to retargeting. But yeah, so what does this look like? It's lots of testimonials, so video and image ads, press amplification. So this is actually something that I definitely recommend if your company ever gets, like any sort of like article feature, or even if you launch your own press release, those things tend to do really good for 1 to 2 days, but then it kind of, goes away. So what you can actually do is, just do something like this where you actually we use TechCrunch for the social proof, right? But we can run this for months instead of, just getting a bump for 1 to 2 days.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say here is you definitely don't start doing it until you have some success in your cold prospecting campaigns, because like the social proof, it's great for getting over the hump, but it's not great for, tapping into pain or benefits and features so much. So yeah.
So one thing that's really interesting, right? Our funnel looks almost exactly the same, or the way we run it. We just call it very different things. Can you go to the first examples that you showed? So instead of problem aware, we just call it problem prioritized. Like, have they prioritized the problem or not? And that's what we're trying to do, because they might be, in your case, they weren't problem aware, but in a lot of our client space, right, they are problem aware. Like, you know that problem exists. It's just not a priority right now. So we call these the problem prioritized phase. The second stage that you showed, right, and you just need a trigger essentially to start that. The second stage is what I call the solution exploration, where yes, it's now prioritized. Now they're looking at, in your case, for example, they were looking at CPQ tools as well, which isn't you. They might be looking at other things like maybe hiring more folks, or maybe to help with that process, but then they haven't figured out how to solve the problem yet. So that's second second stage that we just call the stage the solution exploration. And then the third one, where they're trying to select a vendor, so instead of company aware, I just call it vendor selection, right? So, or the evaluation stage. So it's pretty similar, and these are our 3 stages, and we've broken it down into more specifics to be able to more easily pick which message to use. And then in the retargeting, just like yourself, we treat it more as it's less of demand capture now, it's more of demand gen, because they've shown intent by engagement on the code layer. And so now you're just trying to first is social proof, and then if the audience is large enough, you can go into things like objection handling or giving offers and stuff in like layer 2 and 3. But this is exactly what we do. You have another type of ads, right, which I think is going to be different.
Yeah. So this is something, we just started doing a little bit more recently. And, it's kind of like I mentioned, like you'll, once you get like your targeting and your messaging nailed down, and like, I think we have our targeting pretty tight, but of course, like, messaging always kind of evolves as the business grows. And so, but one thing we found was, actually focusing on things that help your ICPs, like focusing on tactics and strategies that help them do their job better, which your product enables, but it's sort of focusing on tactics, like in this example for account executives versus a cash flow ad. So now what we do in this is, one of our account executives, Chad, he actually shows how he uses cash flow to, like, if he's live on a sales call and they're negotiating a discount or like a product bundle, I mean, Cashflow, it's so easy to make those updates that he can actually do it while they're still on the call. And then, the prospect refreshes their link and then they can sign while they're still on the 30-minute Zoom, right? So it's like a really powerful thing. Like, don't let them walk out the door, like the old car dealership thing. But the focus is on, like using the tactic instead of the product to do it. And then another one, right? It's like ramp pricing. He talks about, like a lot of SaaS deals were stalling last quarter. Something you can actually do, to keep like the revenue coming in, and allow a discount, but not sacrifice your long-term ARR, is actually ramp pricing. And so our product is one of the only ones that can enable that, right? But we focus much more on, the strategy of ramp pricing versus the feature of ramp pricing inside of Cashflow. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because here you can actually see yourself using the product.
Yeah.
Right? If I had to ask you selfishly, right? Like if as an agency, because for SaaS, yes, you can show someone using the product. If you had to do this as an agency, what would you recommend? And I mean, why do you think, if you want, I can even share a couple of examples of things that we are trying.
Yeah.
But so one thing that we are trying, which is sort of similar, was a wild test that we're doing, is I'm interviewing one of our top copywriters, Rashmi, and then
Okay.
what she's doing is she's walking us through how she goes about writing an ad,
Yeah.
and that's the ad that she had written at the end of it.
Oh, nice.
So it's almost like, hey, if this was your ad, this is what I would have done first. This is how I would have done the research. It's helping it's like the service version of this, where we're trying to enable you to imagine how it would look like when you worked with us, and what's the depth of research. But is there any other way you can think of how could a service company do something similar?
Yeah. So service companies, you're right. Like you can't exactly show the product. So, but what services do great is process, right? So I think, like kind of like how we're doing here, like if your agency has a process for creating ads or a process for optimizing them, I think there's lots of things you could do there. Also, especially like, I mean, if clients are up for it, maybe just doing like an ad account audit where you do it live, or I mean, you could record it, but even just seeing like, real data versus, kind of like, I'm sure we've all seen like the fake ad accounts where it's just like very little and it's just not as impactful. Right. So I think something like that would be really cool. Like there's, other agencies in the past where I would, and what I really liked is, they would get really technical, and some of these videos would get like 10, 20 views on YouTube. Like I felt like I had found this thing I'm not supposed to find. And it helped me really technically scale quick. And that's another big example or tip for these ads, is because you can see like on the top one, it's sort of just like a Loom style video. You don't need to overproduce them. In fact, the lo-fi underproduced videos perform better. Like we haven't invested in like a really high quality production, like commercial style ad. What we have done is, I've gone to Fiverr and I've hired like some people with, like green screens, but so it's sort of the middle ground, but it actually hasn't worked as good as the lo-fi. And I think why like the Loom style works good is because people kind of feel like they're getting like a behind the scenes look into what's going on. And it's that same sort of thing. It feels like, am I supposed to be seeing this? Like usually you have to book a demo and go, so people can kind of go at their own process. So yeah, we would definitely recommend that sort of. And the other great thing is like it's quick and easy to make, right? Like you can make one of those in 1 to 2 days versus produce video ad could be a couple weeks. So
yeah, and I think this is going to be the new trend, because people are already moving towards, hey, we need to do more group demos. And this is essentially just like, hey, here's a demo. The ad is the demo. Just watch it, right? Like this sounds like a really good idea. Like one thing that I had done that worked really well for us is on LinkedIn, I gave away a referral sheet template. And that basically had instructions on how to refer us as an agency.
Oh, nice.
And I think about 50, 60 people downloaded it.
Yeah.
And then that actually increased. We got a couple of referrals because they knew how to refer us now. They could also use that for themselves. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, like giving away really bottom the funnel content pieces or access to really bottom the funnel content where they it like a and what can be more modern funnel than a demo
Yeah.
could be a very good interesting
Yeah, I
strategy.
mean, like you definitely don't want to, like cannibalize your own demos where people are just doing that. And if you're going to do it, you want to make sure it's really good so that people
Yeah,
still want to see. So what I
yeah,
actually kind of recommend for these is, only focus on like one thing.
yeah.
Especially if you have a more complex, product where it
Mhm.
spans a couple different departments, like for us.
Yeah.
Like there's so much of the product we can show, and that's kind of tough to distill it down into one image or one video sometimes. But what we
Mhm.
actually did here is, we just do one use case. So like how an AE can use cash flow to
Yeah.
set up rent pricing, or like
Yeah.
there's so many other things cash flow can help an AE do, but it's just focusing on one so that way you're getting really like
Yeah.
you're getting them excited, but then they still want to see more. So you're still going to actually get more demos in the
Mhm.
end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
So just
definitely.
tip for everyone, look at your demo calls, break it down and see which pieces can be purposed into an ad.
Yeah,
I'll be
and
doing that.
I think a great way to do that, is if you have like Gong or any sort of sales recording, there's almost always certain points in demos where people's eyes sort of light up, and
Yeah.
then there's certain points where people kind of sit back and get a little bored. So you definitely want to
Yeah.
pay attention to those.
Interesting. Yeah. And this is the last type of ads that you've also run?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just briefly touch on this, but this
Yeah.
is sort of I mean, I called it brand campaign. It's really more like content ads. So it's essentially like taking your content that's so good that you want to amplify and put dollars behind it. And this is quite a small portion of what we spend, so like 5 to 10%. But if you have guides, like I would recommend guides versus blogs that perform really well on the site. You get a tons of site visits, but maybe they're not like SEO optimized, so they're just not getting that much traffic. You can put them in sort of a brand campaign, and it's even just like a little bit higher funnel. But we've actually been able to source some demos directly by promoting things like this. So and yeah, and like the key is like not gating it. So it's essentially just land straight on our website, but yeah, like I said, if it's driven direct demos, but especially like view conversion demos, we'll see that a lot. And sometimes people want to do something on your website, but there's just no reason to book a demo. So this is a great sort of alternative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of companies' strategies is just this, right? Like they'll
Yeah,
put 100% of the budget into this, and that never makes financial sense. I've never seen it make financial sense. Yeah.
yeah, and they're usually gating it right with like LinkedIn lead gen
Yeah.
forms. Yeah,
Those leads, if you just like calculate a cost per lead and how it leads into an SQL,
yeah,
I have never ever in my life seen it a scenario where the cost for SQL is actually something that they would want to pay, but the cost of leads seems great, so they still do it. But yeah,
yeah. I mean,
perfect.
I've seen it one time, and it's companies selling $100,000 plus deals, where even if you have like
Yeah,
a 0.05%
yeah.
lead to close one rate, it still might just justify it. But yeah,
Mhm.
especially for SaaS that's selling 10 to 30K deals, there's a lot more efficient ways to do it for sure.
Got it. These are all the type of ads, right? Oh, there's more. Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so those are all the types of ads. I figured just at the end I could kind of
yeah.
leave the audience with a couple formulas, right? So I mean,
Oh, yeah, perfect.
there's no one fits all formula, but this is kind of a good starting point. And I think I briefly mentioned all of them, but just to kind of recap, yeah, old versus new way. Obviously, if you're like an old commodity product, this might not work, but there's usually something you can differentiate on. So for us, it was like 4 tools versus 1 platform. Worked really good. This is one that I've used at other companies. Haven't really got it to work at Cashflow, but the concept of why not both, right? Like A versus B, why not both? So for us, that could be like complex SaaS pricing versus a no-code quote solution, like why not? Why not? I mean, you can see why that's a little too much right now. But it's I've another good one. It's sort of like high end versus affordable. Like why not both? So that's a decent one. The press amplification one, which I covered, and then the lo-fi Loom style video ads. Definitely a good starting point for video ads and starting to show like a bit of the product.
Love this. I have never tried why not both style ads. Something that we will be doing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, perfect.
Definitely.
Do you want to just I think we are already 10 minutes out of time, even though we had a lot of technical issues at the start.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate this. I've already have ideas on what I might change in our current ad strategy for just the next month. So I really appreciate you doing this. Is there anything else that we could have discussed, didn't, that you want to touch upon? Otherwise, we can just.
Oh well, I mean, there's in terms of ads in general, sure, there's lots of targeting things, but in terms of thinking about the creative, and going back to what we said, right? It's like definitely kind of nail your messaging, because this won't help you find your messaging. It will just help you distribute it better. But definitely find your messaging. Oh, actually, there is one other thing we'll briefly touch on, which is metrics. So one sort of trap, right, is the click-through rate, like CTR percentage. And a lot of people think they need to optimize for that, but you actually don't want to do that on LinkedIn, especially because LinkedIn CPCs are expensive. So you want to actually discourage the wrong people from clicking, even if they're you're pretty sure you're in their ICP. You only want like qualified clicks, right? So for us, the way we do that is like we almost always include SaaS in the copy, because we're like a quoting, subscription management, billing solution, but specifically for SaaS companies. That's how we're differentiated and why it works. So that works for us. And I think in terms of like benchmarks, like 0.4% to 0.8% is pretty good to aim for. I mean, like we've had ads that are 1% and above, because they drive a lot of curiosity, like, oh, what's behind this, but they don't perform, right? So you don't want to optimize for the click. You want to optimize for the qualified click. And then just a couple other things. In LinkedIn ads, you can set up offline tracking now. I think you've been able to for a little bit. So that's, I mean, if the click doesn't matter, also, the lead on its own doesn't matter. It's really the qualified lead, and then the qualified demo, and then the closed one, right? So typically what I'm optimizing for is qualified pipeline. So which are the leads that are making it to, like 2+ sales calls, that have budget, they're in our ICP. That's sort of what I'm really focused on. And you can actually see that data in LinkedIn ads. And then the third would be, like setting up UTM tracking, so that you're able to capture it on the contact or the lead, but then you pass that over to the deal or the opportunity. So like what campaign, and really it's campaign and ad, like UTM campaign, UTM content. Those are going to be the really good ones. And then final tip for creative is create a running sort of Google sheet of all of your ads with the ad name or the UTM content name. So that way, like when your sales team or really anyone sees the UTM content, they can't see what the ad looks like in HubSpot or Salesforce, right? So they just copy that, they go to the sheet, and boom, they can, very quickly see what the ad looks like. And that way, you don't have to give everyone ads access for the ad manager, but you want to give everyone access to that sheet, so they can kind of like self-serve and help themselves, and then even contribute new ideas, I've found, which is super helpful.
Yeah, that's another good one. Thank you so much. The trick of not looking at CTRs is also very new. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that. So that was really, really interesting. And again, as I mentioned, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. Can we add a link to the PPT in wherever the recording is?
Yeah, definitely. I'll let me drop.
We will do it. Yeah.
Cool. I can drop this link in the chat to the Google slide.
Done. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
And yeah,
Thank you so
if
much.
anyone has questions, feel free to message me on LinkedIn anytime. I'm always pretty much there. And yeah, if any, early to mid stage SaaS companies are looking for a better way to quote, bill, and close, definitely check out Cashflow.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've seen, and I'll just like add to this. I've seen the platform, and it's unreal how easy, how stupidly easy it looks. It's just like it's unreal how easy using that is. And we're not SaaS, sadly. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would be using them. So yeah, cool. Thank you so much again. Thanks, Riley.
Thanks, Ishan. See you later.
Yeah.